Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited to have you here today for our October installment of 12 Months of Leadership. We're going to give everyone a minute just to get settled and get into the room, but we're going to be getting started in just a moment in our session of 12 Months of Leadership from Local to Global, Scholars on Research and Collaboration Across Borders. My name is Celine Krzan. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship here at the University of Buffalo. And you can see today I am joined by three incredible panelists that we really can't wait to get starting and hearing from today. So, without further ado, we're going to jump in and get started in today's session. And today's session is brought to you by the Center for Leadership and Global Impact. We are so grateful here at the School of Management to have a center that really brings these voices together, this research highlighted together, as well as incredible programs across campus for executives, for students, and for community members to not only have these conversations, but really to train up their leadership skills as well as their global impact skills. And today's session, we just have a few reminders for you before we jump in. So we're going to ask you, please feel free to participate with us. We'll have time saved at the end for Q&A. You will see on your screen, you're in a Zoom webinar today. So you might not see everybody in the room. We have a lot of guests joining us from across the world. So thanks so much for hopping in today. But you can ask a question to our panelists. You will see that there is a Q&A button along the bottom of your screen. It's circled right here. And you can drop in a question anytime throughout our conversation that you have for one or all of the panelists for today's session. With that, I don't want to hold us any further, but I'm so thrilled to introduce you to our three incredible panelists, and I'll allow them to do fuller introductions themselves. But we have Dr. Indiana Minto-Koy joining us from the Mona School of Business and Management. We have Professor Augustina O'Connor joining us from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. And we have Felipe Cuepo, and we are so grateful that he is joining us from the United Nations. So without further ado, welcome to our incredible panelists. Thank you so much for being here. And our first question's for all of you. So we're going to do a quick round robin, and Dr. Indiana, I'm going to ask you to start us off if you don't mind. And your first question is this. For each of you, do you mind introducing yourselves? And then share how your journey has shaped the way you approach leading with a global perspective while remaining deeply connected to your local roots.
Uh, Thank you so much for having me, Celine. Hi, everyone, to my fellow panelists as well. I'm Indiana Minto-Koy. I'm based at the Mona School of Business and Management at the University of the West Indies in Kingston, Jamaica. And there I serve as a senior lecturer and as a deputy director with responsibility for the graduate programs, or 8 MSCs, including an MBA as well. In terms of my perspective on leadership, I think my work sits largely in the fields of international business and entrepreneurship. I'm also interested in the intersection in these two areas, specifically with migration and sustainability. In terms of the question more directly, Celine, one of the most impactful experiences I've had in my life was finding myself in London, at the London School of Economics, after I completed my master's in Jamaica. And I found myself in the heart of this rich, culturally diverse city. And I found that for me back then, as a younger girl, I was not daunted. I was not limited by the fact that I came from a small space. I found it liberating. I realized that my story, my history, and my experience gave me a unique lens through which I could actually see the world. And this lens allowed me to walk tall and strong. I didn't feel anyway like a fish out of water, right? And I think that experience really gave me a global perspective, which is deeply rooted in the local, in my Caribbean reality, in community, in context and inclusion. And in fact, it's that experience that really continues to shape me to this day and informs how I lead, how I teach, how I research, how I practice. And I think overall the result has been a leadership style that it's outwardly looking, but deeply grounded in a strong sense of home. And this means that I'm always open to building partnerships, building bridges between global, local, between academia and applied research, between visionary and the grounded. So yeah, I've spent my years really exploring, for instance, how small and developing economies can leverage their dynamism, their agility, and ability to collaborate to really achieve outsized impact on the world stage. So ultimately, for me, global leadership is not all about size, right? It's also about purpose. It's about perspective and a strong sense of place. My Caribbean place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Indiana. What a powerful conversation we're going to have. Professor Tina, do you mind kicking us off next?
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you find yourself. I'm Professor Gestina Kuno. I'm currently the Dean of Students at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. I also teach at a School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences in topics in NGO management and in public administration. So coming to your question, having lived and worked in 3 continents, my journey has been a transformative experience of self-awareness, of growth, and also embracing diverse perspectives. Because I schooled and I did my master's and PhD in the US, did my postdoc in University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. And then, of course, I was born and bred in Ghana. So I've experienced these different contexts. But over the years, I have come to realize that leadership is relational. It's about understanding the context, understanding the culture, and the people that we serve. And having extended my work in international spaces, I realized that global is not the opposite of local. Our local relations or our local perspectives tends to influence how we relate in global spaces. So when we carry along our culture, when we carry along our tradition, when we carry along our experiences, we note that we enrich the global discourses with our local knowledge. So therefore, when we talk about thriving in global leadership, it is an extension of our local perspectives. What we carry from our roots tends to influence and bring different contributions and perspectives in solving global problems. So that's what I'll say for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tina. And now I'm going to pull Felipe down with us. Felipe, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Felipe Caipo. I'm a program management and communications officer with the UN in the Department of Global Communications, and we are responsible for the engagement with external partners within the UN system at all levels. I come from Spain. 19 years ago, I had the blessing of coming to the US for college. I was at Brigham Young University in Idaho. So having lived in Madrid and London for a little bit, Rexburg, Idaho, in the middle of the mountains was a little cultural shock. It was the middle America that I was very interested in experiencing. And yet I fell in love with it, thinking that it was going to be just a temporal experience, and has marked me. And it carries with me at the UN because of that local approach that you were talking about, and all of you have so eloquently expressed. I think that the reality is having a global mindset at the UN needs to be built from the local perspective. It's about people. It's about experiences. It's about building something together, having the individual at the center of it. Having a global perspective is important, but we cannot lose track that people are important. Each one is important. Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, the motto is to leave no one behind. And that means leave not one person behind. So it's person by person that we build what we are as communities. And I think that the UN perspective has given me also a better understanding of what people are and the essence and the value of contribution, that we cannot do things in silos, that it is through multilateral approaches, multi-stakeholder engagement that things happen. And I love my job. I have the best job in the world for me. I love people. I love talking, as you can tell. And I think that the most incredible thing about my work is I have learned as a communications officer and in the realm of the UN that listening better is much more important than speaking louder. And it is extremely, extremely essential that we humble ourselves. Sometimes as UN officers, we think, well, we are from the UN. We have this and we know this and we have this knowledge and we are experts. And reality is that it means nothing if you don't see a person in front of you. If you just see them as potential number, a collaborator, a partner, a statistic, the essence is behind every person, behind every label, CEO, prime minister, a janitor, there's a human being. I think that the essence of what I've learned at the UN is to see that human being and appeal to the human being in my interactions, and then build spaces where that human being can thrive. That is the essence of Agenda 2030. That is very local, very apolitical, but very essential to building spaces where, again, that individual can thrive, that individual can fulfill dreams, no matter what those are, in the space that is shared by everyone. I think that the UN facilitates that. And that's why I love what I do, because it's service for the global community, but at the individual level.
Thank you, Felipe. I'm going to keep you on the spot now and get you to talk a little bit more about your work with the UN. So as we were talking about before this call, the UN operates at the intersection of global vision and local action. So in your view and with your experience, what do you think makes partnerships between international organizations and local communities most effective? And if you can talk about, where do you think there is room to improve, particularly around your expertise with communication and engaging civil societies?
Room to improve everywhere, all the time, at all levels. I mean, otherwise we would not exist. I say that in a perfect world, the UN will no longer exist because it will not be necessary. So I hope to one day not have a job. That is my dream. It sounds weird, but at least at the UN, to have a job elsewhere, but to lose my job at the UN because we are no longer necessary. Challenges, global perspective. I think the essence of the work that we do is authentic engagement. As I said, seeing the individual and identifying the individual needs and people, and engaging with people, not pretending that you know everything, but understanding that there's plenty to learn. I work particularly, so my background, I'm a person of faith. Faith is very important into my identity. And I work as a focal point for faith-based engagement within my department of the civil society. 2/3 of the CSOs, or civil society organizations that we work with, are faith-based or faith-inspired. So we need to understand also that faith-based work has been doing the work that the UN has been doing for 80 years. They've been doing it for thousands of years. There's plenty to learn. They have engaged with communities. They have the trust of communities. They have the approach that we don't have. They have the understanding on the reality on the ground that we don't have. And from afar, from headquarters of the UN in New York, it's always easy to read reports, to issue reports that many people don't read, but they're essential for the work that we do, and then lose perspective into what really matters. That approach is what happens at the local level with the grassroots organizations, with the NGOs that we work with, academic institutions such as universities and other spaces where people are the core element of the work that we do. So in this this intersection of what we call global and local is essential to understand, again, what is the role of the UN? That is to support, not to give. We are not to tell or to dictate how things should be, but we are there to support how things, they need to be built from within. I always tell people, one of the biggest mistakes is to pretend that the UN knows it all and that we have all the answers or the governments have the answers. The reality is that localizing Agenda 2030 and the SDGs in Madrid Spain, my city, or in Kingston, Jamaica, or in Accra, Ghana. It doesn't matter. It depends on the local population. It will look different. There are as many versions of democracy as countries are there in the world. It's not one size fits all. There are elements, core elements, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Charter can be guidelines towards building spaces. Agenda 2030 is essential for that too. But we must understand that it's only by giving certain elements, bricks, and then having those communities build. And then we can support that effort. But to dictate, to be the architect of something, and then the building and the developer and the main, it doesn't work, because we create a chronic dependency on foreign aid. We can create a chronic dependency on external, and then there's never true development, and it's not sustainable in the long term. So what I think is essential is when we work with people, not empower. I don't believe in empowering anyone. I don't think that is the right way of doing it, but I believe in creating environments where people can empower themselves. And that is the role of the UN. We don't have anything that they need. What we can facilitate is that for them to find the ways to by themselves build things. I think that that's the true UN in the 21st century. I want to believe that that's what most of us are doing.
Thank you, Felipe. And it's such a powerful demonstration of community and what we can build together. Dr. Tina, come on down. I'm going to ask you this next question. So you've worked extensively on leadership development across Ghana and Africa. What lessons from local leadership traditions should global leaders pay closer attention to, especially those that don't often get recognized on the world stage?
Okay, thank you very much. One key lesson that I'll talk about is collective accountability. And in many African traditions, leadership is a shared trust and not an individual pursuit. I'll give a typical example. As a dean of students, I have established a sustainability club here on campus. Even though I am the founder, I have worked with some students and local organizations to conscientize or empower our students to think sustainably and think of how we can ensure that we are conscious about climate action, about community development, and having in mind that we have the SDGs that is guiding whatever efforts that we are putting in. And I don't know if you've heard of Ubuntu, which says, I am because we are. So it reminds us that leadership should prioritize interdependence and community well-being over personal ambition, because whatever we do individually would affect humanity as a whole. If you have been following the news, Ghana is battling with this issue of illegal mining, where our waters are being contaminated with mercury, and now is affecting the plants or the fruits and vegetables that are being brought in from the rural areas. And in fact, in some of the localities, some of the children are being born with deformities. And this is how concerning the situation is. So we always have to think of how our actions affect the other person. And then I think when Felipe was talking, one lesson which is key is the wisdom of listening. It's very important. In traditional leadership, it begins with consensus building and dialogue rather than quick decision making. And you want to make sure that the people that you are working with have a buy-in in whatever we are doing, and that our spiritual and moral grounding in our local system offers some balance. And leadership is a moral duty and not just a strategic function. So I would say that we have to reimagine leadership, not only as deeply human in practice, and not only as a global scale, but deeply ingrained in human practice. So that's what I would say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Tina. I love that. I am because we are. What a really great message for all of us. Dr. Indiana, I'm going to ask you this next question on your research and the connection between entrepreneurship and governance. So, how do you think that small island states exercise global leadership in innovation and policy influence, even as they navigate their unique local constraints? And connect that back what we can all learn from your research.
Thanks for that question, Celine. That's in fact, that's an excellent question. And it's a question that really relates to the paradox of small size and big influence, right? Small size versus big influence. And it's a question that's very much applicable to the Caribbean, which of course is a region that's defined by small open economies. We often make the joke that when the US sneezes, the Caribbean catches a cold, right? So as a grouping of small island developing states, the Caribbean has consistently navigated turbulent waters. We've navigated these waters alongside larger, sometimes better outfitted or well outfitted entities. And so the challenges here have been exacerbated even more recently by the increase in frequency of natural hazards and even geopolitical events that have quite frankly made these waters even choppier for us in the Caribbean. However, these experiences have offered us in the region an opportunity, a unique set of strengths, an opportunity for strategic positioning, agility, and insights that can in fact allow us to exercise leadership in innovation and in policy influence globally. So ultimately, while resources and resource constraints have limited the traditional exercise of power for the Caribbean, and resource constraints do form a part of the Caribbean's reality. The other reality and the other really positive side of the story is the resilience that this has in fact born in the Caribbean and in Caribbean people and government. So the resilience is seen not only in our ability to bounce back from natural disasters, some of which, have the effect of wiping out years and decades of development spending. But we've also been able to turn some of the vulnerabilities into vision through opportunities to pilot scalable innovations, and even by shaping international norms through advocacy and networks. For instance, we've seen our leadership and innovation surfacing brilliantly in our athletes, not only here in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean, where we've seen athletes doing well on the global stage. We've seen our musicians who are not just regional, but global cultural icons, to even our members of our diaspora, the Caribbean diaspora, who continue to occupy key positions in global spaces. We also see this quality leadership, not just at the political level or in our communities, but also in our local businesses across the Caribbean, who've been able to withstand diverse competitive pressures to enter global markets and to do well in these global markets. So, Celine, permit me this illustration. We're able, if I go to London, England, for instance, I'm able to have, to enjoy a bottle of Tropical Rhythms that's manufactured by one of the Caribbean great food giants, Grace Kennedy Company Limited. I'm able to remit funds to Jamaica or anywhere in the Caribbean through a partnership between Western Union and the same Caribbean business, Grace Kennedy Company Limited. I'm able to enjoy, in the Caribbean, and maybe Prof. Tina can understand this as well, a good slice of hard dough bread from one of the Jamaica's national bakery, right? And so these are items, goods and services and products that we're able to enjoy in global centers that are from the Caribbean and are made by Caribbean businesses. As countries that in the Caribbean that have been deeply, deeply affected by migration and diasporas, we sometimes take these instances of international business and these instances of international entrepreneurship for granted without really understanding these goods and services that we experience in global spaces are very much the result of international business strategies from our local companies. They are the results of corporate plans, business systems, and processes that have been put in place by regional firms that have seen us being able to access Caribbean goods and resources and services in global settings. So these are just some of the ways in which the Caribbean and other small states, in fact, can demonstrate leadership and impact, and not only about size, again, right? But it's also about strategic leveraging. Thanks for that question. Excellent question, Celine.
Thank you, Dr. Nian. A really beautiful demonstration, and I want some bread now, right? So this question is for all of you to wrap us up. Our time flies, right? So I'm going to ask Dr. Tina, if you don't mind starting us off. In this moment of global leadership, what's one piece of advice you would give to scholars or academics or leaders that are seeking to shape both local communities and global discourse?
You say one. Thank you for this question. I think scholars should bridge research and relevance, and ensuring that our work not only advances theory, but also transforms lives in tangible ways. So when I conduct my research, it shouldn't just end in journal articles. It should inform practice and policy in whatever I'm researching on. And then I want to add that we need to build collaborations that are reciprocal and not extractive, so that partnerships where both the global and local voices shape the narrative. And we shouldn't also underestimate the power of context-based knowledge, because what you learn in your local environment can actually inform global solutions if framed with rigor and clarity. And I want to end with this tagline that global relevance grows from local authenticity. So thank you for this question.
Felipe, please.
I think that it's essential to understand that, I mean, as a communications perspective, I have to say, as officer, I have to say that from my perspective, it's about storytelling. And you cannot tell stories without people. And you cannot tell stories unless you make them personal. Grand messages and whatnot are always rooted in personal, emotional people. I think that for those of us in leadership within our spaces, is all about, I'd say, empathy with others, having curiosity to learn about others, but honest curiosity is not so much about I have to do it, therefore I ask, but I want to know because I want to be better. I want to build better. I want to support better. And I think that that is the empathy that we must have, that we care, but also the curiosity to learn about other people, to take the time to, I would say that before the UN comes up with solutions, it's essential that we listen to the problems, because we may have a perspective that is completely off and not realize that we really did not know much about it and we thought we did. So again, finding that space where we can truly contribute, where we can find that empathy and curiosity for the challenges, and to see them as, again, I'm going to bring the person of faith in me. In this life, for my faith tradition, I'm a Christian. So in this life, except for death, everything has a solution. That's what I always say. And death was already solved for me. But again, in my faith tradition, I believe that Jesus Christ saved that. So anything has a solution. We need to approach things like that. We need to approach it that no matter how tough, no matter how conflictive, no matter how challenging the situation, there is a way out. There is a way to contribute. There is a way to build something together, and that it cannot be done by one person. The power of one is real when you add them up. So you need to bring people together. And I think that that's the beauty of the UN. The UN is a convener. When the UN calls, people tend to respond and contribute. And I hope that with that spirit, we can then find ways forward always together.
Thank you, Felipe. And Dr. Indiana, please bring us home, wrap us up.
Thank you. My one is somewhat related to Prof. Tina's, and that is it's important. And from a Caribbean, open Caribbean context, it's to anchor our work in local realities, even while we recognize and acknowledge the global challenges. The real power of scholarship, I think, lies in its ability to bridge. It has a bridging effect, including the ability to transform research into tools that empower local communities and businesses, while also translating those lessons into contributions that shape international discourse. And I think at a practical level, this involves one, we heard it before, the importance of listening deeply to communities. And for me here, through my research, I extend communities to businesses as well, local business. This also means at a second level, forging dynamic partnerships with other scholars and researchers that sees us sharing research skills, capacities, and this is where the new insights will come in. And finally, number 3, I think, is the importance of challenging paradigms and givens. And this is by infusing our local realities and innovation on the world stage. Thank you, Celine.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all 3 of you for joining in this conversation today. What incredibly inspiring, powerful, and what a strong reminder for all of us. So thank you for this. And just to wrap us up, we're going to invite you to our next session. Our next session you'll see here in just a moment is Monday, November 3rd. So thank you, Maddie, for sharing that screen for us. Please scan the QR code and register today. We can't wait to see you at our next 12 months of leadership session together. But have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Keep leading locally and globally, everybody.